All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, and Ben Dixon with you guys. Michael Shure is going to join us in 1 second. So first, and we're going to have some great lines and videos from the debates, so that's all coming up. I tell you all the time on YouTube, you could hit the join button below and become a member, and then you are the Young Turks. But I love the Twitch audience too, and they've been amazing. Obi Mom Kenobi with another 50 subs that she gifted, and they have great handles too. Erica MH22 gifted 25 subs. Dog Lounge TV 10 subs, and then Cypher 111 Hottie Meter Mid Vikings 27. Individualism Killed a Cat gifted 3 subs. Thad Thick and Deep Space Monk also gifted 5 subs. And my favorite, a lot of people gave bits. Rose 52, 1,000 bits. Min Vikings 27 again, 2,500 bits. But my favorite is Depressed Progressive, cheered with 1,200 bits. Mixed messages. And then cheered with another 300 bits and said, Anna, go girl. Okay, so
thank you.
So Depressed Progressive, a little bit more chipper today, and cheering us on, and we appreciate it. We love you, your family, and we do this show together. And then from our member section, Matthew said, Cenk miming Trump is hilarious. Thank you for saying that. I don't know if it was distracting or not. But I'm so amused by his hands, and he's constantly doing this and constantly switching it up and this. I've never seen anyone talk with their hands more. And the funny thing is, it matches his speech. He says absurd things, and then while he's saying it, he does absurd things with his hands. So he's like, and let me tell you something, he's with sheets and pillows, and I know wind better than you do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the play-by-play and the miming that we did during the broadcast. Okay, let me bring in Michael Shure. He's on the road. Michael, last debate of the presidential cycle. Thoughts? Go.
Listen, I think it was a non-event. I mean, it was an event because it was a presidential event. I don't know that this is going to change the face of the election in one respect at all. Here's the thing, these debates are about moments. No moments emerge from this debate. We as Americans remember moments in debates. They change a tide. There are 12 days left or something absurd like that. And there's one candidate who's outside the margin of error. This was not a bring it back within the margin of error type of debate. The other thing about debates is Donald Trump did better this time than he did the first debate in Cleveland. But you don't win by doing better. You just do better. And I don't know that a tie is good enough for Donald Trump here. And I think that this will go down as a tie debate. I can't imagine an undecided voter who was swayed by this debate. There may be some, but this was not a swaying debate to me. That's my take.
Michael, can I jump in? I'm actually surprised that you're saying that. I think Biden's performance tonight was his strongest performance of any debate, including the Democratic primary debates. And I know he's only had one other debate with Donald Trump, but he came prepared. He was sharp. He had good comebacks. Well, the only times I personally cringed was, on issues where Trump pretended to attack Biden from the left, and unfortunately Biden fell for it. But that's just me, right? Like, I'm thinking about the general public, and he did really well. I'm surprised at how well Biden did. I'm happy with it, and I feel like there might be some, I guess, independent voters who might be swayed by his performance tonight. But I'm curious. You don't think so?
I think you hit on the most important part of this. I don't think tonight, I sort of think en masse, this election season, we came into this hearing that Joe Biden has dementia. We came into this as many Democrats came into this fearing what these debates would be like. He would bumble and stumble, he wouldn't know his stuff. And I think you absolutely make a great point there, Anna, which is this was an entire season of vindication for Joe Biden. It's over, he can exhale now, and I think that is the takeaway from these debates. I just don't think it's a moment, it's a general sense. And I think that, in one respect, you're right in that it does sort of reinforced the comfort that a lot of people were starting to get about Joe Biden, that he was not just capable, he was sharp. And I tweeted that I'd forgotten about dementia with him, because this is really something that we came into this with. And so your point is really well taken. And I think it's important to remember that that's what these debates were about from the beginning. And at the end of the debates, America sees that this is not a man with dementia.
Yeah, I mean, look, if anyone's got dementia, it's the guy saying, I know wind better than you do. You did nothing about health care. I can't believe you passed Obamacare. Okay, so unprecedented madness has a interesting line here. And then I have a response. So it's from our member section, tyt.com/join to become a member.
Cenk, can I interrupt for 1 second? What are bits?
Bits are just ways of donating on Twitch. That's all.
Thanks. Okay.
Yeah. I have my own sets of questions, like what is Dragon Squad? But anyway, unprecedented madness writes in, guys, I'm sorry while I agree with your analysis, but I think you're missing the point that the fact that Trump acted somewhat civil will give him a boost. Mainstream media will be gushing all over how presidential he was tomorrow. Well, I hear you on that, and I think you're right to be concerned. But first out of the gate is Jake Tapper with, and he said Trump behaved more like a regular person at the debate. He lied a lot, but didn't seem to set himself on fire.
Come on, Jake.
Not what I would call a glowing review.
But even still, I mean, like there's a huge asterisk to that, and the asterisk is they had to cut his mic.
Yeah,
they had to cut his mic.
But also,
so we don't. Go ahead, Michael.
We're nearly 4 years into this presidency. It is too late for this man to be presidential. If he looked better tonight than he ever has, fine. He is not presidential as we have been accustomed to it. So even if that's what comes out tomorrow, demeanor. But you know what he wasn't tonight, that Joe Biden was? He wasn't empathic when he had the opportunity to be. And this country needs empathy now, maybe more than in any of our lifetimes. And I think it's super important to remember that. Joe Biden seems empathic, and Donald Trump, when given the opportunity on the stage at a time when he looked better than he did 3 weeks ago, was not empathic. And I think that's important.
One quick thing there, we can't stress that enough because of how impactful 220,000 lives are, but also take away the fact that Donald Trump had no substance. Like he was more measured, but by being more measured, he didn't get to perform his show. And without being able to perform his show, it really showed that he had no substance, he had no details, and he did a lot of whining. He did more whining than he did all the other bellicose times that he was in the last debate. So I think even in his performance being a lot more gentle, it really didn't play in his favor.
Yeah,
totally agree.
Totally.
Yeah, and on the issue of empathy, Riley Vision wrote in on Super Chat saying, when they wrapped up talking about the lost undocumented kids, Joe Biden said 525 kids lost, and Trump responded with good. And so, yeah, that's unbelievable. And the press is now also pointing out, first of all, it's 545 kids, but Trump never said he was going to reunite them with their parents. He said, well, where they're staying is clean. So what are we going to do? Keep those kids for the rest of their lives in clean cages? Is that his answer? I mean, you want to talk about lack of empathy. I would say out of all the horrible things that Donald Trump has done, that, right or wrong, probably resonated the most with people. The kids in the cages, right? And he's unprepared for the debate. And then he comes in, and when they bring that issue up, he says, good, and at least they have clean cages. Oh, I mean, we're used to how horrible Trump is, so our bar is super low for him. And we're trying to figure out if he crossed the lowest bar, cleared the lowest bar in history. And we got it as a tie on whether he cleared the lowest bar in history.
How did you guys think of, what did you think of this conversation about fracking? I'm curious mostly because we're in this space right now. But people are talking about how, Biden said he's going to end the oil, or draw down the oil industry and things like that. Again, to me, that isn't a moment. First of all, we are in mentally and physically and in actuality moving moving towards greener energy in our minds and in our actions already. So I don't think that comes in the same way it would have 25 years ago. But people are starting to draw down. Oh, in Western Pennsylvania, that could hurt the president. That could hurt the vice president. But I don't think this is a sticky moment. Do any of you?
Yeah.
Nah.
So look, the issue of fossil fuels is a little bit of a tricky one. And Joe Biden's trying to find a middle ground that America can live with. And I think there's a very clear polling on other issues, right? So universal health care poll's great. Recently a poll came out about spending $2 trillion on a green energy plan. Okay, so basically the Green New Deal, basically the plan that it's not exactly the Green New Deal, but it is actually even more similar to Biden's program. And it won by 60 points or so. I mean, I've never seen a poll that lopsided. So all those things are great. When you get into, should we ban oil? I haven't seen a poll on it. And as a progressive, I appreciated that he said, yeah, we're gonna transition out of it. That's what we gotta do, right? When he says, no, I'm gonna keep going on fracking. Look, I'm just so used to moderate Democrats. I mean, I would have been, I would have fell down out of my seat if he said that we were gonna stop fracking. We already know what his policy is. He talked about it in the first debate, et cetera. Is it good on that front? No, of course it's not good. But honestly, I've read the rest of his plan and it's pretty good. I mean, it does come a long way towards the Green New Deal.
Evergreen Action, which is made up of people from Jay Inslee's campaign, they've liked what they're hearing, and Jay Inslee likes what he's hearing. I think that these are important little signals. I think Anna has her clip, right?
Yes, so I have the clip ready. So during the portion of the debate that focused on immigration, Biden decided to go after Donald Trump. Obviously justifiably over his decision to implement a blanket strategy of taking children away from their parents as they came to the border seeking asylum. Take a look.
Our children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through
But how will you reunite these kids with their families,
Let me just tell you,
Mr. President?
they built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this conversation. Quick response.
And you'll separate them from their parents once they get to the border with their parents.
Came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Bay, real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up question.
They did it. We changed the policy.
Your response to that?
They did it. We changed.
Did not.
They built the cages.
He's such a liar.
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who built the cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 of sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go.
Yep,
Nowhere to go.
545 of them.
It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you about
I will say this. They went
10
down. We
seconds,
brought
and then I need to ask
reporters, everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some of them haven't been reunited
But
with
just
their
ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask them that. Who built the cages?
Let me.
So when Trump keeps saying who built the cages, I think Biden did okay. In that moment, he should have hit back with, listen, The Obama administration did not implement a policy, a literal blanket policy of separating every single child from their parents, from their families, as they reach the border seeking asylum. That is what Trump did. It was a zero tolerance blanket policy. Didn't matter what people were seeking asylum for, didn't matter what they came to the United States for. Every single child in 2017 was taken away from their parents as they reached the border. And it was specifically done as a deterrent to teach these migrants a lesson. How dare you come to our border seeking safety with your children? How dare you try to protect your children from the violence in your home countries? You know, it's so unbelievably frustrating to hear Trump, regurgitate that line. And look, I'll be fair, but Obama wasn't great when it came to his own immigration policies. That's part of the reason why he was called the deporter in chief at some point. But I will say that Trump intentionally, with the help of Jeff Sessions, who was his attorney general at the time, before he was disappointed in his attorney general for not being enough of a lackey for him, decided to do the most cruel, disgusting action of taking these children away from their parents. And as many as half a dozen kids died in Border Patrol custody under Trump's administration. How many children died under Obama's administration? Oh, that's right, zero, because he didn't have that blanket policy. He didn't. So I would have liked to see a stronger answer from Biden on that, but there's no question that Donald Trump's immigration policies have been the cruelest and have led to dozens of migrants dying, including as many as 6 immigrant children. It's disgusting.
He also said, by the way, about the immigrants who come back to court as they're supposed to for the asylum seekers. He said they're the ones with the lowest IQ. And to me, that's really telling about the way Donald Trump thinks of the law. Only the people with the lowest IQ would follow the law. Of course, everyone else would break the law. Well, that's what a lifelong criminal thinks. And that's who Donald Trump is.
And someone who has the IQ that says a date called November 3rd. What do you think? What do you guys think in terms of when Trump goes after Biden? There's a part of me that's for what the Obama administration did. There's a part of me that wants him to say, "I was the vice president. You are the president." I know that you probably shouldn't do that, right? What does Mike Pence have to do with any of what you're doing, Mr. President? But it seems like there's a way to fight back against blaming everything from Biden on Biden. Joe Biden had no control really over what went on. He was an advisor to the president, closer than many vice presidents have been, but he was just an advisor. I don't know what he should have done, but it's frustrated me all the time, and it doesn't matter because there's not going to be another.
Yeah, he inadvertently did that.
Yeah, you're right, and that's true.
On the part where they were talking about why didn't he get comprehensive immigration reform done, he was like, "Well, I wasn't the president," or something to that effect. But I agree with you, Mike. I think he could have really pivoted that way and held Donald Trump accountable for the fact that he hasn't done these things over the last 4 years. In fact, he's exacerbated every single problem that we had, and highlight the fact that no, I wasn't the president, but we got X, Y, and Z done underneath President Obama. What have you gotten done? I really think he could have played that ball a little bit harder, but he did inadvertently kind of get a dig in there at President Obama, and I'm glad he got off of it because that wouldn't have played well at all.
Yeah, I think that he's in a tough spot there. I agree with Ben, and so the way that I would have gone is, you guys are gonna be shocked. I hope you're sitting. I would have gone on the offense, and so this is partly what Michael's alluding to, right? Say, hey, listen, you're the president for the last 4 years. Where the hell's your healthcare plan? You keep talking about, oh, we had 8 years. You had 4 years. You weren't the vice president. You were the president, right? So where's your healthcare plan? I know that you gave Leslie Stahl a book filled with 1,000 blank pages, okay? But what were you doing for 4 years? So what's the only thing you got done? $2 trillion tax cut for the rich, right? So you say you built a wall. There's 5 miles of wall. What did you do? You got nothing done. You got nothing done except tax cuts for your donors. Now I know Biden's not that guy. Almost no Democrat is that guy. Maybe AOC, maybe Katie Porter, maybe Jamal Bowman, but Cori Bush and stuff. But they're not here, right? But yeah, go on the offense. And look, furthermore, I would have said to Trump, and Biden went a little in this direction. It worked great. Are you ever going to take responsibility for anything? Because then it leads him to say absurd things like, I take full responsibility. It was China's fault, right? I mean, he literally said that, those two sentences back to back, right? And then I would go down the list for all the things. 220,000 people are going to dead. Are you taking any responsibility? We lead the world in cases and deaths. Are you going to take any responsibility? And but not just on coronavirus, on every issue, right? You say, hey, you know what? On the one hand, you say that I was too tough with the crime bill. On the other hand, you say that I'm going to burn up the suburbs, right? Well, that doesn't make any sense. B, for all the violence that's happened recently, are you going to take any responsibility? Because I wasn't the president, you were the president, right? And you know what Trump does when challenged on that, and it's in the comments here too. It's in everything that everybody says. I can't find it right now, but some of our members writing in, all the guy ever does is cry. So look, it would have been a killer line. I wish he'd said it. But if Joe Biden had at one point turned around and said, are you still crying? It would have been game, set, and match.
Yeah, that's a moment. That would have been a moment.
I think another exhale here is that the Hunter Biden thing went nowhere, right? I mean, everybody came in on pins and needles over this thing, and the Wall Street Journal has now said that their reporting was unable to confirm at all that Joe Biden had inserted himself into this at all. It went nowhere, and that was going to be the big splash, right? Inviting Tony Bobulinski there, doing all of that, nothing, and we come away with nothing from that.
Yeah. Let me just comment on that for a second. I find all of the Hunter Biden stuff. Look, the criticism about him working on the board of Burisma, that's the only credible criticism that I see, and it's the argument about nepotism. But you can't get that argument from Donald Trump, who litters his entire White House with nepotism. Like he's all about nepotism. Yeah. But in terms of attacking him for all the other alleged scandals that have no actual substance to them, attacking him for his substance abuse issues, his addiction issues. It's all incredibly disgusting. It makes me uncomfortable. Every time I hear these claims from Trump lackeys, all I can personally think about as someone who, has my own criticisms toward Biden for sure, is Biden and what he went through with the loss of family members, having to go through that kind of disgusting attack toward his son. It's just, I don't think it plays well with most Americans. The hardcore Trump supporters maybe, but they're not representative of the majority of the country. I think most people are disgusted by that. I think most people who have either known of or have someone in their family who have suffered from addiction issues don't like it, doesn't play well with them. It's just a really cheap shot toward Biden. It doesn't have anything to do with actual substance or policy. So I'm glad it's not sticking. I was really worried that it would, but it makes me happy to know that people are not really buying these attacks against Hunter Biden, especially when it comes to his, past issues with addiction.
Yeah, and Trump says so many absurd things that I think people have tuned out. You took $3.5 million from Russia. What? Nobody believes that. What? That's the first time I don't know. That's the first time I've ever heard of Biden taking $3.5 million from Russia. It's just everything is so made up and so outlandish. Oh, you're making money from sheets and pillows. What is that? What are you talking about? And then so when he gets to, hey,
for the My Pillow guy.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, wait, you're the pillows guy. Literally, the My Pillows guy is your best friend, right? So when he gets to, hey, Hunter Biden and you are corrupt in Ukraine and China, it's in a cloud of so much nonsense that I think people totally ignore it because he's like, oh yeah, remember that corruption you did with cotton candy? And people are like, what? So they're just tuning out of the nonsense. I don't think it's landing at all. All right, listen, we've got more clips for you guys, but first, I'm gonna do. There was a great moment that actually connected to one of our sponsors. Honestly, he did it again in this debate. So Trump says we're planting a trillion trees. He hasn't planted a single tree. It's a made-up program. It's a total lie. Once he called it a billion trees. A couple of times he called it a trillion trees. That's the thing about Trump. He's so detached from reality. He really thinks that when he says he's been better to African Americans than anyone, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln, people are gonna like that. They're gonna be like, oh, that's so true. Lincoln, was he okay with blacks? I don't know. But Trump, it's 50-50. But everybody else, Martin Luther King, it doesn't matter. Or even if you're just sticking with presidents, LBJ passed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, but no. He definitely wasn't as good as Trump is with African Americans. I mean, it's so outlandish, so stupid. So now the reality is, what's cool about this coverage is that it's brought to us by you guys, as I keep telling you, hit the join button below on YouTube, tyt.com/join if you're watching anywhere else, but also by our sponsors. And aspiration.com/tyt actually plants trees. They've actually planted 2 million trees already and growing. So when you sign up for that account, you actually they plant 10 trees for you. And every time you round up, if you go join their program, they plant another tree. So Trump's not doing it, but our sponsors are. And look, yeah, sure, definitely go to aspiration.com/tyt. You keep your money there, and it doesn't go to fossil fuels. All that stuff, that's great, right? But the larger point is, progressives actually want to do something about it. I feel like moderate Democrats, we got to nudge them and push to the point we had earlier in the conversation, pull them, push them, get them there. Okay, not fracking, but oil, not now, but 2050, but we're getting there, right? But Trump's on a different planet where he's planted 1 trillion trees. Right? I mean, I don't know, like Michael, doesn't anyone say to the guy like, you gotta stop saying we're planting 1 trillion trees. It's embarrassing. Like, we haven't planted one. We didn't even plant one in the Rose Garden. We haven't done anything, okay?
They like cut down trees in the Rose Garden, did they?
Right, that's true actually. I think that, but he surrounds himself with people who say to him, tell them about the 1 trillion trees. And so I think that's the problem.
That's right. Rudy's like, I just came out from a great interview with this Russian reporter, and I gotta tell you, main thing is trees. 1 trillion.
The reporter was guessing. Yeah.
I wish I was in the debate prep strategy session where they're like, should we say 1 million trees? And somebody's like, no way, 1 billion. And Trump's like, I got it. You guys are dummies, low IQ.
Right.
We go with 1 trillion trees. As long as we're lying, why not make it up? In one of these, I wish there was another debate, because I think there's some chance he would say at some point that they've planted 1 Brazilian trees.
No.
I want to come back to that Hunter Biden story. I want to come back to more of your comments. And if you can, tyt.com/go makes a giant difference. And I'll do one quick shout out to another sponsor, 2strongcoffee.com/tyt. They sponsor so much of our stuff, and they're great, they're progressive. They help progressive causes when you sign up, 2strongcoffee.com/tyt. Let's take the quick break. I can't wait to hear the Hunter Biden story. And we have more clips from the debates and more of your comments when we return. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk, Ben, Anna, Michael with you guys, and you as well. WH Vids on Super Chat says the real winners, drum roll please, Cenk's hands, Anna's punk, and Ben's Jesus Christ, man. Love you guys. Well, love you right back. We appreciate it. And by the way, subs on Twitch, Min Vikings, Grand Poobah, I Am Jew, JUH, Tiff Purry, Curly and K's.
I was like, who stole my handle on Twitch?
Chloe Gamboa, Goner in Paradise, Hello Child, Mad City Miss Kitty, Dispel Myth, J Hall 03, Torax 41, Z Style, Some Big Ditch, Adoring Praise, Walk Wakanda retrospect. Okay, anyway, twitch.tv/TYT. Thank you for watching and for subscribing. You guys power this show. On YouTube, obviously hit the join button below. It makes a big difference when we see your names because you've got the TYT badges at all levels. And at the $4.99 level, you're about to get the post game we're gonna do for you guys in a little bit. Anna, you had Hunter Biden story.
Yes, so there have been some pretty strange attacks on Hunter Biden, particularly Hunter Biden's relationship with his father, Joe Biden. And so there was this tweet that got a little bit of attention that I want to share with you all. It featured, I would argue, an incredibly sweet photo of Joe Biden and his son Hunter. So let's take a quick look at that. And the commentary that came along with this photo was pretty disgusting. Does this look like an appropriate father-son interaction to you? And so John Cardillo is the person who tweeted that. And my answer is, yeah. That looks like a great father-son relationship, one that's full of love and acceptance and understanding. What kind of relationship do you have with your father? I'd love to know that.
I responded the same way. I tweeted back to him. I said, yes.
Yeah, look, I don't know what's wrong with these people. They're sick in the head. Well, is a dad not supposed to kiss his kids? I mean, what is wrong with you people? And in fact, counter testimony in our member section wrote in, Hunter Biden not landing and worse. It's alienating older voters who love their imperfect adult kids. And I think that that's a great point. And that's what I mean by we do this show together with the members. Because I hadn't quite thought of it in that way. I just thought it wasn't landing because Trump has so many conspiracy theories, like windmills causing cancer and injecting bleach into your body, and how stealth fighters are actually invisible. I mean, he had invisible ink in the 1,000-page non-book that he gave to Leslie Stahl about his healthcare plan. But so I just thought people are tired of it. It doesn't resonate. They don't care about Hunter Biden. It doesn't affect their lives at all. But I think that counter testimony is right. It's actually counterproductive. I think a lot of people are looking at it and go, the kid had addiction issues, and it's obvious that Joe Biden loves his kid and he's trying the best he can, and he lost a couple other kids. I mean, let it go, man. Jesus, my God, do you have no soul at all?
Hunter Biden, if I'm not mistaken, obviously I got a few things wrong, or one major thing wrong tonight, so I don't want to get anything wrong again. But Hunter Biden was in the car when Joe Biden's wife and daughter died in that car accident. And so he's been through his own struggles. He's been through some pretty horrific things in his own life. And to, use those struggles to attack Joe Biden is just, Joe Biden, he might have some flaws in his record, right? How about let's focus on policy? But Trump is incapable of doing that. Trump and his goons have decided to go to the bottom of the barrel and attack Joe Biden in the worst possible way, which is by attacking his own children, his own son. And I'm glad that it's not working out for the Trump campaign. It's so despicable and so disgusting. And to be quite honest with you, I don't have children, but when I think about like my own family members, if I were in politics in any way, shape, or form, and people were coming for my family members, I would not have the type of restraint that Joe Biden has shown during this campaign. I would lose my mind if someone was attacking my family members.
You know what I'd do? I'd go on the offense. And so at one point during the debate, he just kind of mumbled it under his breath. But Trump said, and then he had a problem with the military. Wait a minute. Now Biden's kids are in the military. How about your kids? So if I was Biden, I'd be like, you keep yapping about my kids, right? And how about your kids and Ivanka getting 17 patents approved by the Chinese government as soon as you got into office, right? And how your kids have lived off of not just you, but off the American people. And we're sick of it. We're sick of your corruption. And you have the temerity to talk about my kids? And you want to talk about the military? When's the last time your kids went to the military? When's the last time you went to the military, Mr. Bone Spurs?
When's the last time you were in the military? Yeah.
Right, and so don't tell me my kids are in the military. What do you think they were? Suckers and losers? Right, I'm sick of you and the whole country's sick of you.
I think one thing that stood out the most is in that exchange about Hunter Biden is what the commenter said from the member section. This backfired, but it backfired long before the night came along, because I've seen nothing else work on leftists to soften up the image of Joe Biden than the attacks on his son, particularly about the drug addictions. This photo, I've seen people who are like, I absolutely hate Joe Biden from the left, saying, but he's a good father. And so this is backfired in the most spectacular fashion. And the fact that they couldn't read the room, right? They couldn't read the tea leaves, or they couldn't even read Twitter to figure out that this was not working. They just doubled down. It just shows that they have nothing. They are at the end of the road in terms of their strategy.
I think that's such a great point, because that's exactly what happened with me, like 100%, right? Seeing the way that they attacked Joe Biden for being an empathetic, kind person, but more importantly, being an empathetic, kind father.
Yeah.
Like it did soften up Biden's image with me. Now, at the end of the day, the policy is what matters the most, but the fact that Trump has nothing to latch onto other than these disgusting smears and attacks toward Joe Biden's family, yeah, it made me soften up toward Biden. There's no question.
Yeah, Anna, you said it earlier in the night. He's a one-trick pony, and so the reason he keeps going to Hunter Biden is because that's all he's got. He's an absolute mess, and he can't land anything on Biden because Biden's problems are that he was too conservative, not that he was too progressive.
Right.
So he keeps going with, oh, you're a socialist, and Bernie is going to take over the party, and Biden keeps saying, I beat Bernie, what else do you want from me, right? So that's not landing, so he's going to this corruption shtick, but he's got nothing. And he just keeps pummeling Hunter Biden in a way that's gross to everyone involved. And guys, think about it this way. We thought as progressives that Bernie was too soft on Biden. He should have concentrated on his record on Social Security, civil rights, and I can go down the list, right? But it's unthinkable that Bernie Sanders would have attacked Joe Biden's family. Unthinkable, right?
Right.
And if he had, we would have been like, what are you doing? Don't do that. That makes no sense. You know why? Because the left has decency. And unfortunately, the people who are supporting Trump have shown the opposite.
And in fact, when people were, and I don't think attack is the right word, when people were pointing things out about Barron Trump at one point, it was people in the Democratic Party who were saying, you cannot do that. We are not going to talk about Barron Trump, whatever there was to talk about him, speculate about him. That's the president's son. That's somebody who has nothing to do with what we're upset about. And so you're right, Cenk, that never would have happened with Sanders. It's unfathomable. It's not even worth talking about. One thing that I do think that is important that nobody's really talked about, and you may have because I just joined the party late, but 50 million Americans have already voted, right? So what happens in these debates, while it's impactful, it's not impactful like it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, when fewer people were voting early, not to mention because of the coronavirus this year. But the point is that when you have these closing debates and it's the last chance to see 50 million people, it's a lot of voters, and they've already cast their ballot. And so I think what that can sway is also, I think, overrated.
So that's a good point because, and we were talking earlier in the night about the huge voter turnout that is expected, and it appears that it's going to be 10 to 15 million more people than in 2016. And since Republicans already vote at a huge rate, especially his base of white evangelical voters, they already had a 85% voter turnout in 2016. You really don't have much room to grow there. It seems to indicate both as a matter of logic, but more importantly, as a matter of the mail-in ballots that we're actually seeing, they're coming from at a much greater rate from registered Democrats. So if all those Democrats are showing up to vote, Republicans are in a world of trouble. So that's why tonight, when Trump was bragging about, oh, your oil stance isn't going to play well in Oklahoma and Texas. Brother, if we're talking about Oklahoma or Texas, you're already done, and you just don't know it.
Yeah. So if I may, I'd like to move on to the part of the debate that focused on coronavirus, because I think that Biden did have some pretty strong moments there. So let me start off with Biden's comments on teachers. So during the debate, coronavirus, of course, obviously came up, especially when you consider that 220,000 Americans have died during this pandemic due to Donald Trump's lack of leadership, his lack of empathy, his unwillingness to do anything effective in response to the pandemic. And so Donald Trump was confronted with the fact that he's been pressuring schools to open prematurely without social distancing, without masks, without the proper safety precautions. And Biden really did have a strong line here. So I want to play that moment from the debate. Take a look.
We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open, but when they need resources to open, you need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that what we're going to make sure that we open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. So don't worry about it. Come on.
That was a pretty strong moment. Go ahead, Michael.
No, I wasn't going to say that. I was listening to you guys react to that, and I think I did the exact same thing. There were some bites that Biden took tonight, which I thought was interesting. Again, we're dissecting something that I don't think in the long run matters, but for the theater of it and what Joe Biden, it does speak to me that Joe Biden has a total command of what's going on at this point with this race and the person he's running against. And I have to say that I think Kamala Harris in the first debate in Miami did Joe Biden the biggest favor, and it helped him in the Democratic nominating process, and it helps him now. And it goes to a little bit of what you were talking about before, Anna, which is that, and I've said this before, nobody's really ever been mean to Joe Biden. Everybody likes Joe Biden, right? Kamala Harris surprised him. I think he was totally shocked by what happened at that debate, and it made him realize, okay, this is what's going to happen to me now for a year and a half if I continue this long in this race, as I thought he would at that time. And I think that the more that this went on, the better he was. And I'm sure you both watched, or you all, the three of you watched the Sanders-Biden debate. Which was the last debate. It was just the two of them, and it was more symbolic for Senator Sanders because it was pretty much a fait accompli that Biden would win the nomination, and Biden was better there, and even in taking criticism. So I think when he goes against Donald Trump, he does in large part have Kamala Harris to thank for what happened at the very beginning of this race, because he's better at taking it than he was, because nobody had ever given it to him. He sailed to re-election in Delaware. He was the vice president. Didn't really matter. He wasn't a terrific debater against Sarah Palin or Paul Ryan. He was fine, but I think that it made him better, and I think you're seeing that tonight with things like what we just played.
He really was genuinely shocked when Kamala Harris responded with, "I was that little girl," during that debate. And yeah, Jake talks about that all the time, and I think it's hilarious. But yeah, it's shocking that he was shocked, but he was shocked.
Right, yeah, he was, and people have just like, he's always been the guy that people like. You don't have to love him, you could roll your eyes at him, which people do, but people kind of like him. And here someone was being mean to Joe Biden. What? That's never happened before, and I think it helped.
The part that stood out in that section, that was at the very beginning of the debate, and Joe Biden really came out the strongest and the hardest at that point. And I think that probably was the point where we could say he won the debate, because I think in the last two debates with Kamala and Mike Pence, and in the first debate, he didn't really get to they didn't get to really nail Donald Trump to the wall about his responsibility for COVID-19. And so hearing Joe Biden just be relentless, not letting up. And then I know he got the remark in at the end, and I think this is important, even though he said it sarcastically, it's critically important to say that Donald Trump is actually saying that not too many of you are going to die. The next follow-up question really should be, will that be you? Right? It really matters to the 1 or 2. If it's 10, if it's 100, it matters to them. And that's what Biden was trying to capture with that last sentence. And that's where I think he actually won the debate in the first 10, 20 minutes of it.
No question. And every minute that Donald Trump is talking about COVID is a bad minute for Donald Trump. So I think to stretch that out as long as Biden was able to is important too.
Yeah, at one point Biden had a great line, and it probably summarizes this whole contest better than anything else. He said, look, out there, you guys know me and you know him. You know my character and you know his character. Who do you want in there? And that's no contest. I gotta say, even for a healthy chunk of Trump voters, they know the real answer to that. They just do. And so, by the way, people are writing in a lot about that Hunter Biden, Joe Biden pick that we showed earlier. And it goes to the same point. Rainbow Bright, this is all the member section. Rainbow Bright said, my dad passed a few years ago, and the last hug I got and kiss I got from him resembles this pick. Jessica from Task Force 2 wrote in, so I'm no Biden stan, but I think the photo of him and Hunter is sweet. The guy loves his kids, that's a good thing. By the way, if anything is inappropriate, it's those photos of Trump looking at Ivanka like she's a piece of meat. You compare
we have those images.
Yeah. Oh, we have it. Yeah, there it is.
There they are.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I don't think that's inappropriate either, honestly. Look, I know, because of what he said about how he'd like to date his daughter and if et cetera, and he said it like 3-4 times. There it is. If Ivanka weren't my daughter, I'd be dating her. He's unbelievable. And that's where he's leering at her, et cetera. But for
if she were his daughter, I'd be dating her too.
Yeah, and so for him, for the Republicans trying to make a big deal out of the Hunter Biden and Joe Biden loving each other as a son and father. Yeah. I mean, it's really one of the worst political strategies I have ever seen in my life. And it's, as you could tell from our progressive audience and everywhere else, it's not at all working. Frank Luntz said it's one of the worst political strategies he's ever seen, and he's the top Republican pollster. And speaking of which, we have a poll in. So again, by the way, thank you to all the members. If you would like to be a member, tyt.com/join. And if you're watching on YouTube, you just hit that join button below. Okay, Data Progress has a poll out, 51-39 Biden. And they didn't take a random sample of people watching the debate. They weighted it so that it more closely resembles the 2020 electorate. So hopefully, theoretically, that means it's even more accurate. And Data Progress has an excellent track record. So, and that's along the lines of what we thought. The first debate, Biden won huge because Trump was a total mess. He was a disaster. He was a one-man Sharknado on himself. It's like that old SNL skit where the shark eats the guy, right? I don't know if any of you remember that, except he did it to himself, right?
Land shark, right? A land shark.
He was a land shark. That's right. Candy Graham. Okay. Anyway, but in this debate, Trump, as Jake Tapper said, didn't light himself on fire, so he only loses by 12. So if there's more polls, we'll bring them to you, obviously, as we go forward. So, Anna, you have more clips?
I do. Okay, so we're gonna stay on COVID because there were other strong moments. So Donald Trump, as we all know, has been incredibly salty toward Anthony Fauci, one of the few public health experts who have given us the information we need to keep ourselves safe during this pandemic. So that topic came up during the debate. Let's see how it went down.
If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony, but he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem. I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay. He said, this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, you're...
Donald Trump has been attacking Anthony Fauci almost from the beginning of this pandemic. He has been even more vicious toward Anthony Fauci recently. And look, I'm a fair person, so I'm gonna mention, early on in the pandemic, due to our issues with our supply chain, we were worried about hospital workers, healthcare professionals not having the masks necessary to keep themselves safe as they're treating people with coronavirus. As a result, there was this messaging coming from people, including Anthony Fauci, yes, early on, indicating that average Americans don't need to wear masks, don't worry about it. And it was because they didn't want average Americans buying up all the masks that nurses and doctors need as they're treating patients with coronavirus. So that is a supply chain issue. I think people like Anthony Fauci were placed in an impossible situation. And Donald Trump is now using that to his advantage. But we have no doubt that what we need to do is encourage Americans to wear masks to prevent the spread of coronavirus. And it just sucks that Donald Trump is able to use what happened in the early days of the pandemic to his advantage. It is a supply chain issue. We shouldn't be having our healthcare material, equipment manufactured in other countries. We should have it manufactured here in the United States, period. But we don't, because we're looking for cheap labor abroad. And so we never have any honest conversations about that. It's incredibly frustrating, but I did want to draw attention to that exchange because Donald Trump has not been friendly with Anthony Fauci. He hates Anthony Fauci because he has the audacity to share accurate medical information with us so we can keep ourselves safe. Donald Trump doesn't like that because it hurts his image and his mind. But at the same time, I do think that it would have been great to have a frank and honest conversation about how damaging it is to rely on manufacturing abroad for incredibly important equipment like medical equipment, especially during a time like now when we're dealing with a pandemic.
Right. Also, there are three things that people call Fauci. They call him Dr. Fauci, Tony, or Anthony Fauci. And that makes no difference in the whole world to this race. But every time he said, I know Anthony, I like Anthony, Anthony may be a Democrat, I feel like, no, he doesn't know him because he calls him Anthony and nobody calls him Anthony. Maybe his mom did.
Yeah, and remember, Kristen Welker's setup to that question was, you've called Dr. Fauci a disaster and an idiot. And then he's like, I like him. That's not really what I'd call someone I like. And so, and it seems absurd and over the top. Yeah, and by the way, speaking of Welker, rave reviews. And I think she did a great job. I think she was stern when she needed to be. Now, to be fair to Chris Walls, she had it much, much easier. The cutting off the mics for 2 minutes made a giant difference. And B, Trump chastened by the last debate in his performance, and it made a giant difference, right? He wasn't the Sharknado that he was in the first debate. But by the way, that shows you, since Trump completely changed his tactic, even he knows he lost the first debate. Otherwise, he'd have come and done the same exact thing. Okay, so guys, we're almost out of time here. But we got a post game coming up for you guys, and I've got another poll, and the results are amazing. And I'm going to tell you about that in the post game, and then I want to tell you about another two really important and interesting moments from the debate. Hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube to become a member. $4.99 level gets you the postgame. tyt.com/join. Everywhere else. And thank you to our sponsors, aspiration.com/TYT and twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. We'll see you in the postgame. Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.